Welcome to the video demo series for Configure.IT. Unleash the hassle-free way to build bug-free mobile apps in the quickest possible turnaround time. So in this video, I want to teach you how to configure the chart view. And to do this, we need to start off with an API to go ahead and get some data. So I've gone ahead and created an API. I've called it Get Chart Data. And this API is a SQLite API. You can use a MySQL API, but I just decided to store the data locally. So if I go over to configuration, you can see here that it's just a simple query, and we'll go ahead and debug this so you can see the output. So you can see that we've got the chart ID, the month, a value, and a color code. And this color code is a hex code that we'll be using for our pie chart and our donut chart. So let's go ahead and configure our charts. So we'll come back to the App Console. So the first thing we want to do on our page is go ahead and add our data source. So we'll click on Data Sources, Add Data Source, and we'll just go ahead and find our API. It's going to be under the local API, Get Chart Data. Click Save. Now we want to go ahead and add our chart view, and the way we do that is come over to our control list. We'll type in chart, and we'll drag over chart view. Okay, so now we just need to configure our chart view. So we'll walk through the properties. This section right here is pie chart properties. We're going to come back to that when we talk about pie charts, so we'll just close it right now. The graph type, the first one we're going to choose is our bar chart. As you can see, there's several different chart types, and we'll come back to those in just a minute. The key name to plot data. So this is the data that you actually want plotted, and in our case, we want the value plotted. So this will be your Y coordinates. The next one is your key name to plot name, and this is what you want along the X coordinates. So we want the month. So the next thing we want to configure is our background. This is the plot background. We'll go ahead and choose a light blue. The plot border color, we're going to choose red. The vertical grid line color, we're going to choose a dark green. The horizontal grid line color, we're going to choose a white. And the marker symbol fill color, we're going to choose a yellow. And then the scatter plot gradient color, we're going to do an orange. So now that we have it configured, we need to go ahead and configure an action to call the API. So we'll click on Action, Load, and we'll go ahead and trigger the local API, and select our data source, and click Save. So now that we have that configured, why don't we go ahead and take a look at it in the app. So there you go. There is our bar chart. So you can see we've pulled 5 months worth of data, but it doesn't look that great, and we want to go ahead and make some changes. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Now the first thing we want to go ahead and do is we can enable a dotted grid. So we'll enable that. And the plot data range, this is the range that we want for the Y coordinates. If you remember, it was graphing it from a 0 to a 79, but we want to go ahead and graph it from 0 to a 100. So if we put 0 to 100, so our bottom limit will be 0 and our upper limit will automatically be 100. So the plot background, we're actually going to go ahead and change this to white, and we're going to change the bar color in just a minute. But the horizontal grid line color, we're going to change to this color right here. So now let's take a look at some other configurations. Plot line width does not apply on a bar chart because it's not a line, it's actually a bar. Now the next one is our plot border width, and we'll go ahead and set this as a 3, and what this will do is this will outline the plot window. The plot border padding, we're going to set at 50. So this padding is the space from the outside of the chart view to the actual chart, and we'll take a look at that in just a minute. And the plot color code is the color of our bar. So we want to go ahead and choose a hex code. So it's going to be pound 1C9689. That's a nice little green. plot marker symbol doesn't apply to a bar chart, so we'll come back to that in just a minute. And down here we can set the various label characteristics. So for example, we can change our label font for the x-axis, we can change the size of the font, and we can also change this scale. And what this means, how often do you want a label placed on the chart? So for example, we have one right here and it's only putting one label, so we're going to go ahead and choose 6. And then if we want to go ahead and rotate the x-axis so that it's not perfectly parallel with the x-axis, we can put that here. So if we put in 90 degrees, so it'll automatically rotate the label 90 degrees. Here's our y-axis label font color and our font name. So if we want to change that, we would do that here. Also the font size and the scale, we're going to do 10. So we're going to go from 0 to 100, and it's going to put a mark at every 10 points. The x-axis rotation, if we want to rotate the x-axis, we can do that here. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and take a look at some of those changes. All right, so let's go ahead and refresh. Okay, so you can see here that our graph looks quite a bit different. You can see our red plot border color right here, and that's the area around the border. You can also see that our grid is now a dotted line. Our vertical grid line is green, and our horizontal grid line is a light green. And our plot border width is 3. If we wanted a thinner one, we can always come down here and make it 1. And let's refresh that. Okay, so now you can see it's a lot thinner. You can see that our graph is set in 50 pixels from the edge. If we wanted to make it 30 pixels, we can come and change that. And let's hit refresh. Okay, so now you can see that it's only 30 pixels now from the edge. And you can see that our plot color code, the 1C9689, is the nice green bars. And so that's how you would configure a bar chart. Now let's take this same data and we're going to go ahead and change the chart type. So let's go ahead and change the graph type from a bar chart to what's labeled as a scatter plot. It's not actually a scatter plot, it's a line chart. That'll be corrected in the next update. So we'll choose scatter plot, and we're going to come back and we're just going to refresh. So you can see now it's turned it into a line chart. Now we can customize some of this line chart. First we're going to, the plot line width, it wasn't applicable in a bar chart, but now we want to go ahead and change that to a 3. We want to come down to the plot marker symbol, and we want to go ahead and choose a pentagon. And so what this will do is it'll put a pentagon symbol at every point on our line. The marker symbol size, by default, a 5, but we can make it a 6 or 7. The color is going to be this marker symbol fill color right here. So let's go ahead and refresh. So there you go. So there's our line chart. Now if we want to come back and we want to do a 1, and let's do the marker symbol size back at 5, and now we can refresh. Alright, so that's how you configure a line chart. So let's take a look at another graph type. So we'll go from scatter plot to a curved scatter plot. Again, this is nothing but a curved line chart. So we'll come back and we'll take a look at that. So instead of sharp point, all it does is just turn it into a curve. So it makes it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. And it's configured the exact same way as a traditional line chart. Now we can come and take a look at a stepped scatter plot or a stepped line chart, and we'll refresh. Okay, so now you can see what a stepped line chart is. And let's take a look at another one, which is the gradient scatter plot. Now the gradient scatter plot or the gradient line chart brings in an additional value, which is this scatter plot gradient color. We'll go ahead and refresh. So there's our gradient line chart. So as you can see, any area below the line chart has this color, this gradient color here. So it's also known as an area line chart. So now let's take a look at the last two. Those are the pie chart and the donut chart. And they're configured the same way, they just have a little bit different appearance. So the first, let's take a look at the pie chart. As you recall, there is this extra section of pie chart properties. And we'll take a look at these. So the first one is the key name to pie slice text. So for each slice of the pie, you can assign a text field. It can be anything you want it to be. So in this case, we're going to do a month. The next is, do you want to show a legend on the pie chart? So we'll go ahead and choose yes. And is the pie slice label rotation relative to the radius? We'll come back to this in just a minute. And then the pie slice label font color, and then the font name, and then the font size. We can also choose a legend background color. So we'll go and choose just a really light blue. And the legend font color, we're going to choose white. Legend font name, if you want a specific font name, you can choose that here. And if you want a font size, the font size, we're going to make it an 8, or let's go 9. And we'll go ahead and refresh and take a look at that. So you can see our pie chart with our legend. You can see the names of each month, and the colors in this example are auto-generated by the app, but we want to go ahead and make a couple of other adjustments to this. So let's go back to our app console, and we're going to come up to the pie chart properties, and the first thing that we're going to take a look at is pie slice label rotation relative to radius, and we're going to go ahead and check that. And what that's going to do is that's going to rotate the label depending on where it is in the pie chart. The next thing we want to do is key name to pie slice text. We want to display more than one text field, so we're going to actually go down and we're going to do other. So what we want to do is the month, so CD_month. And we're going to use the curly brackets, comma, CD_value. Okay, and so what that'll do is that's going to give us the month and the value for each pie slice. Now the next one is this padding for selected pie slice. So what this does is when you select a pie slice, it pulls that slice out of the pie. So we're going to set the padding to 15. Now the last thing we want to do is assign our custom colors that we assign for each month in the API. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to scroll down until we get to the plot color code, and we're going to take this hex code out, and we're going to type in the field of our API that has the color. So it's going to be CD_color. And this will use the hex color in that field for each pie slice. So now let's go ahead and refresh. So there you go. So now you can see that we have our month and our value. Whenever I select a slice, you can see that it's pulled out, and these are the custom colors that were chosen in the API. You can also see that the text has been rotated based on where it is in the pie. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the last chart. And we're going to scroll up and we're going to choose the donut. So we'll choose donut chart. And the donut chart is configured exactly the same way as the pie chart. In fact, why don't we go ahead and refresh and take a look at the donut chart. So we'll hit refresh. So there's a donut chart. All it is a pie chart with a missing middle. And that's how you configure chart views. Want to learn more? Visit our Help Center for additional tutorials, our Support Center, and our online community, where our support team will assist you. Keep configuring.